Hello, my friends. My name is Brent. I'm a coach, a healer, and intuitive. And today's episode is going to be a fun one. It's story time. I'm going to share with you three stories of my own awakening, spiritual awakening. So I want to talk about that with you, talk about what happened, what happened after, the implications of it. And I want to do this for a handful of reasons. One is that, and this is like the main reason, it just felt like it was time. Just felt like it was time to share this. You might be surprised to hear, I've been reluctant to talk about this. I don't know exactly why. I guess it feels vulnerable. It feels a little bit like, sticking my neck out a little bit further than I would otherwise prefer to. But I want to talk about this with you because I guess like on one level I want to share it, and then on another level I want to make it comfortable for you to share your own experiences of awakening. And I want to talk about awakening as a thing. So I guess it is a real thing, and I've observed it to be a real thing. Like it's an actual experience that you can pass through. Many people do, many people have done historically, many will in the future. It's a very important thing to pass through. So according to my own experience and according to accounts of it that I've read, if you have an awakening experience, 100% of people who go through it look back on it as one of the most important things they've ever gone through ever. It's incredibly important, incredibly consequential. And it doesn't necessarily mean passing through awakening means everything is like suddenly good and like you have all this like power and control and everything, your life is just better going forward. In fact, it can often bring about a host of new challenges that you had no way of anticipating. And yet nobody would ever go back to their old state. You may say it kind of ruefully here and there, but nobody would truly ever wish to go back to having taken the blue pill, to reference the blue and red pill in the Matrix. So once you wake up, there's a general sense of gladness and gratitude for having woken up. And for a lot of people, once you get your first few tastes of it, slowly but surely your life becomes oriented around it. It becomes a very, very central priority to awaken all the way. And there are various gradations of it, and it's mapped out by various traditions, both historical and also contemporary, such as integral theory. And so it just really becomes a priority once you really just get a taste of it. So I want to talk about it. And I also want to talk about it and because I want to really undo this impression about awakening as if it's a special thing or as if it makes a person special. Because like one thing that's made me really shy about talking about it is that I never felt like I was able to talk about my own awakening experiences without inadvertently communicating that I'm special in some way, which of course is not the case. It couldn't be further from the truth. And anybody who has experienced awakening also knows this, that to go through awakening, it is, of course, of extreme consequence, of great importance, and it's wonderful. But it's also very earthy, very common sense. It's just like waking up out of an actual dream. Like when you wake up out of a dream that you had while you were sleeping, it's not like some amazing achievement that you woke up out of that dream. In a way, it was just inevitable. It was just something that was already going to happen anyways. And so it's natural. It's not for any one person as opposed to any other person. Anybody, anywhere can have an awakening experience. And that's just the truth of it. So it's really an act of grace. Like if it happens, you're very fortunate for it to happen to you. It does sometimes happen like just randomly to people, like just people just minding their own business, having no idea about spirituality, having no spirituality practice. They just suddenly wake up and everything changes for them. And that happens all the time. I don't know if it happens all the time, but it does happen. And then it does happen to people more frequently who have a spiritual meditative practice where like they're actually working towards enlightenment. So you can't make awakening happen. It's really mysterious in that way. Again, it's grace. It just happens, when it happens. But you can at the same time set up conditions so that it's much more likely to happen. If you kind of know what to do, if you have guidance, if you have a teacher, if you're learning about it, then you can kind of work your way and increase the odds of actually waking up. So yeah, that's awakening. Really wanted to talk about it. And so we'll just define it quickly. and then we'll get on with the show. So what is awakening? Really, what is it at its very core? So I've been reading about it. I've been reading different accounts. There are many different definitions, but my definition is to wake up, is to suddenly have a direct experience of how things are, where it happens in an instant and everything changes. A metaphor that I often use is being a chick inside of an eggshell, right? Where like you've just, your whole life, all of like the 1 week that you've been alive inside this eggshell, your whole universe has been inside that eggshell. And then once you crack that egg for the first time and see the universe outside of the eggshell, then everything changes as a result of that seeing. And the cool thing about this metaphor is that even when you see, you're still mostly inside the eggshell. So there's like a whole integration process that happens after the initial seeing. But once you see that there's a whole universe outside the eggshell and it's more massive than you ever thought, then really you become aware that your job now is to get out of that eggshell, and everything becomes about getting out of that eggshell. And there's no stopping until you get out of that eggshell, because now you've seen. So it is a seeing. It's a seeing of reality. This is in direct contrast to believing something. If somebody tells you something and you believe it, like that's fine, that's useful, but that's not awakening. It's really when you have an awakening experience, there's not a single shred of doubt about it. There's no doubt. And even if you were to tell this experience to somebody else who has not experienced awakening, and if they were to argue with you, and if they were to argue like really well and have really amazing, convincing arguments to tell you why you're wrong, you may not be able to necessarily win that argument against them, but it doesn't matter because you've seen, and that seeing just doesn't go anywhere. It's done. You're awake. There's no going back into that dream. Awakening, I found, can happen like all at once, like a lightning strike. Sometimes it takes place like over, say, a period of time where like it gradually builds it gradually completes itself over maybe a few days and weeks. But generally, like even still, like it's a very encapsulated period. It's like one period of time where it's like it's done and then you step out of it. Good. Now, here's another thing. I am going to discuss psychedelics in this episode. So not all of these stories contain the use of psychedelics, but 2 out of 3 of them do. And so I want to also set up a caveat here that I'm not condoning the use of psychedelics. As far as I'm concerned, psychedelics are a loaded gun. And if you're going to use them, then you must be willing to accept all of the risks inherent in them. And there are very real risks. So go at your own risk, be ready to take responsibility for whatever happens, and be careful. With that said, I took psychedelics in a few different situations, and they worked very, very well for me, and that's what I'll be telling you about here. Okay, good. All right, so let us begin with story number 1. So this is the one story that, which one am I going to begin with? Yes, okay. So this one does not talk about psychedelics. This one is what came when I read The Power of Now. And I don't remember the exact date, but it was, I would say, somewhere around 2009, maybe 2010, where I had recently read The Power of Now, and I had been returning to it a few times since. So just like reading through it, stopping, and reading through it again, stopping. And the reason why was because when I found The Power of Now, there was something in that text. There was a degree of peace and knowing in this text that there was something about it that made me just need it. Like I needed it. I thirsted for it. It's like I had to make my life about this until I could know what this guy, Eckhart Tolle, knows. I needed to fully understand what he was talking about in a way that I could actually explain it myself. Because I would get these like sort of tastes of it, but like, not get all the way there. And so it just became a practice in the back of my mind all the time. So I would have like a meditation practice, but then also just going about my life, I would practice being present, being still, noticing the now moment, and seeing if I could really get a sense of it. And so after a little while of this, I eventually read a part of the actual text where he says the following line. He says, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's something like, there was never any past, there is only the now. There never will be any future, there is only the now. So anything that ever was the past happened in the now. And anything that will ever happen in the future will happen in the now. And I read that, and then it clicked. I got it. And in that one moment, it was a very subtle moment. There was no explosion in my mind or anything. There was just a sense of waking up, and there was a sense of silence. There was a sense of like internal chatter and suffering and fear just chilling the hell out. It just went away, and I was just left with the silence of the now moment. And it lasted for a little period of time, and then it stopped, and my regular state of consciousness went back. But again, the eggshell had been cracked, and I had seen the reality outside the eggshell, and then that began the real process of integrating what I had learned into my life. And so over the ensuing years, I had practiced just living from this space that I had discovered in that one piece of text. So I want to just dwell on this a little bit more to see if I can share it with you, because this is really maybe the most important form of waking up that any person can go through. And it's become so, like at this point next, this was several years ago, I've become very used to it. It's become very commonplace for me, and I know how to access it and sort of live from it. But I tend to forget about whether or not other people have gone through this as well. I sincerely don't know how common this is. So I want to describe this for you so that you can tell me in the comments if you have experienced this or if you have not experienced this. I just want to know what it's like for you, if this makes sense for you. I want to get out of my own head and see what this is like for you. So please let me know in the comments if you resonate with what I'm about to share with you here. So here it is. We make a distinction between clock time and psychological time. And psychological time is really what we're waking up out of. So clock time, just very simply, is just like the fact that the planet is spinning and we count the days. So like the planet spins and the sun appears to move around, and we call that a day. And the planet revolves around the sun, and we call that a year. But it doesn't really mean time is passing in any meaningful way. It just means a planet is just turning around the sun. Like that's just it. It's just a motion. It's like imagine going into another room and seeing a ball rolling around another ball on the floor, and imagine like counting that and that's the reason why you think time is passing. And imagine like asking somebody like, how many times has that ball rolled around that bigger ball? And somebody's like 5,000 times, and then being obsessed with how many times and at what place that ball is around that other ball. It's just a movement. It's just a motion. And it's just a motion that's just happening in this now moment. And it could start, it could stop, it could go backwards. All of it happens within this now moment. So the key here to this awakening is bringing your attention to this now moment that all of the movements, all of the circular movements is happening inside of. There's this weird thing about clock time where everything is happening in circles, right? It's like the spinning of the planet, the orbiting of the planet, the orbiting of the moon around the planet, the movement of time, like the hands of the clock, like everything is just moving in circles, and we're counting things moving in circles. And so we call that time, and that's fine. And at certain points, certain things take place, and that's true. But all of these things moving in circles, again, happens against a backdrop of utter stillness. Just stillness, complete stillness. It's amazing. The ego, of course, is not interested in the stillness. Like if you were to point your attention to silence, stillness, spaciousness, like any form of nothingness, right? The ego's like, yeah, so what? What's significant about it? But if you allow that emptiness, stillness, silence, spaciousness to be significant, then then your priority system flips so that you start to value it the proper way. You start to value spaciousness a little bit more than the stuff that appears within spaciousness. And then you realize you can start to see your own identity as that spaciousness, as the now itself, which sounds, of course, like super weird, but your fundamental identity is that. So, but suffice to say, you can just sit in this room and look around and notice how incredibly, incredibly still everything is. And there's no evidence of time passing anywhere. There's just spinning things everywhere. What's so significant about this is that when you bring your attention to the spaciousness underneath clock time, and you see that the only thing that there ever was, is, or will be is just this now moment, there's deep freedom. Deep freedom. It's a profound liberation that takes place. Because it becomes very experientially clear, like in a way that you really experience. You're not just believing it and agreeing with it, but you actually see that there's nothing of true consequence that could happen anywhere. Everything that is done, everything that's made, every book that's written, every building that's built is just sand castles in the tide. Just the tide comes in, it washes away all the sand castles, and it's left blank after. Eventually our sun will explode, eventually it'll destroy Earth, and everything will be erased. And then later there will be more life. So there's just a constant washing away, a constant cleaning of the slate. It also goes to show how this now moment is truly virgin, which is a fun way of describing it. Virgin in the sense that, like, you can't make a permanent etch on it. You can't mar it. You can't injure it. You can't hurt it. You can't make anything permanent in it. It's just ever fresh. And so you can take that knowing with you as you move about this silent arena of now. You can build stuff and be creative and connect and love and have fun. And you can do things with a lot of seriousness, a lot of intensity, a lot of abandon. You can come at it in any way that you want. And there's no judgment coming from anywhere. There's no mandate coming from anywhere about what you should or shouldn't do, or in any way that you should do it. So you can see, like, deep, deep liberation. So anything that we consider to be the future will happen inside this now moment. Anything that has ever happened was inside this now moment. So yeah. So, again, let me know how that went, because I've tried articulating this a few times, and maybe I'll spend a little bit more time doing it, because it's such an important thing to talk about. But there we go. Good. That's story number one. Story number two. So this one occurred when I was on mushrooms, and this one was after a pretty decent and wonderful sort of glowing kind of trip with a couple of my friends while I was in my second year of university. I was studying in London, Ontario. And then we had a wonderful trip, lots of good talks, and I was making my way home. And I was coming down, so like the trip wasn't exactly as intense anymore, but there's just sort of like a glowing, and there was like a lot of wisdom and clarity, and my mind was kind of working in a really sharp way. I was really enjoying. And I stopped in a convenience store to pick up something, and I saw a family that was there, and it was just sort of like an older mother with a sort of a teenage daughter and her boyfriend, and I think they may have been sort of like they were on something. They weren't like really like totally with it. They were kind of like just like getting provisions and maybe going back home. And I could, there was a sort of a sense of suffering that I could pick up, like sort of a lot of unspoken weirdness in the family that was sort of beneath the surface. And I say this because I tend to be very intuitive and empathic, and I can pick up a lot of unresolved hurt and pain and emotion in people, you know, when I'm like around them, and it's always been this way. And I remember like just like watching them, but watching them really for the first time with a total lack of judgment. There was, up until then, I wasn't a terribly judgmental person, but I did have some judgmental tendencies about me. And what was noteworthy about my looking at this family and watching them interact with each other was that there was just a total lack of judgment whatsoever. So a total lack of how they should be, how they are versus how they should be, what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how they should be, how they shouldn't be. All that's just totally gone out the window. And just looking at them with just a distinct knowing that if I were them, then I would be them. If I were in their situation, I would be in their situation, and I would be like them. And we are, it's not that we don't have free will, but to an enormous extent, our circumstances and our situations lead us in whatever direction they're going to be, whether it's like hormonal, internal, whether it's our upbringing, whether it's what happens to us along the way. There's just so many determining factors. And it's just really like the nature of our journey is so incredibly personal. It's just so incredibly personal. And there's a sacredness to every single human journey. This was becoming clear for me in this moment, that there is value packed into every human journey. There's truly no human journey that's better than any others. It's just what is there for the human soul to experience in this lifetime. And it's not possible for a person on the outside to look in and comment on the nature of that experience. It's just the only safe assumption that we can make is that this person is getting from this experience, which is for their growth as they move through existence, as they move from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, or even within just this one lifetime. And so I caught the eye of the mother of this family, and it was a very, very brief minute. It was just a very, very brief catching of eye contact, and I looked in her, and I saw my own consciousness in her. I saw myself in her. And I realized in that moment that there's no other. There's just no other. There's no person other than me. There is only a single consciousness that is garbed in different personalities being brought into the world. It's one consciousness, and that consciousness, of course, we can call God. I'm God, you're God, and God as like players in the world, as egos and personalities interacting and discovering their own selves as God. I'm going to say this tentatively. It seems that the major purpose of life, the major purpose of life is to go into this life and go through the course of our journey. But if we can do it in such a way that as we go through it, we recognize that we are God experiencing itself as these things, then it brings a whole bunch of meaning and comfort and significance to what we're doing, as opposed to going through life feeling like we're lost fragments, failing at doing what we're supposed to do, and doing it wrong, and thinking that our life is wrong in some way and trying to correct it in some way. We can go through it with the sense of, okay, nothing's wrong. I'm just God experiencing this. Yes, so that's that. So just one consciousness going through life. And I believe also that it's not just, I wouldn't want this to sound like we just passively move through life, like, okay, everything is just laid out and there's nothing that can be done about it. In one sense, this is true, but if you put all of your eggs in that basket, then it becomes false, because there is still the part where you can choose how you experience this life, and you can make it better for yourself, more comfortable for yourself. You can express yourself with more courage and more creativity and more power, and find your power and claim more authorship over your life. That can happen too. But then weirdly, once you do it, then you'll see how it was always going to be that way. So I'm really coming to see lately the question of free will versus self-determination as really just two sides of one thing. But that'll be a discussion for another day. Suffice to say, for this awakening is we are all one consciousness discovering ourselves as God. Good. So that's story number 2. Story number 3. All right. Okay. So this is another one. So this one occurred in Thailand. Just sip some water here. Excuse me. and we were staying in one of the Thai islands, Koh Tao, if I understand that right, which is Turtle Island. And again, this was also around 2011 or so, 2012 maybe, 13, final answer. And there was a mushroom bar that we were aware of that was on top of a hill, and I really, really wanted to check it out. Jessica wasn't feeling it at the time, so I went there and went up there to have a solo trip. So I went up to the top. There was a bar at the top of this island, and there's like a beautiful view. It was wonderful. And met some people there. We were talking, just hanging out. And then once the mushrooms started to kick in, so I was taking a shake. Once they started to kick in, they left me to enjoy my trip on my own. I will say that this is probably the safest and most loved that I've ever felt on a mushroom trip, because as I said in the beginning, and I really meant it, like they can go either way. Like you can have mushroom trips that feel very, sometimes you like, it feels very malevolent or unsafe, and you can really go through a lot of fear. And, you know, in this case, it just felt very safe and very trusting. And a lot happened in this trip. There was a lot. One, as it came on really quite the strongest, I remember looking out at the sky, the night sky. It was rapidly darkening as night was coming on, and seeing sort of like a silhouette image of God, where I was looking at the sky, and there was a sense of like, oh, there you are. Just, you know, again, God, not Christian God, just God. And being like, oh yeah, right. You're there this whole time. You know, this is like, you know, this whole thing that we're in, it's not totally real. Like this is just sort of a play area. And I loved it so much, seeing that image, that I tried like getting it more, but like the dose just wasn't quite strong enough, I think, to really, you know, kind of grab it or grok it. So I just had to, it's sort of like a fun little, okay, I'll catch you later. And then the real trip began from there. There was a profound sense of worthiness and enoughness, of needing nothing, needing absolutely nothing, a real connection with my own sense of completeness, nothing lacking. I had gone into this trip with an intention to really find that which I had been seeking, where despite I had already experienced the first awakening I was telling you about, the power of now, despite that already having happened, there was still a search for enlightenment, or a complete, like sort of a complete full circle, a coming home, like, just, you know, like the thing. There was just like the thing that I was looking for. And my intention going into it was to find that thing. So I eventually arrived at this place where I was interacting with what felt like my guides. And toward the end of the evening, they said to me, okay, Brent, like, are you ready? Are you ready to like really get it, to really see it, to really, you know, we're going to give you the thing. We're going to really pull back the curtain and give you the thing that you've been looking for. You know, are you ready to get it? And I was like, yeah, man, lay it on me. Let's go. And so there was a pulling back of the curtain, and I saw what I would describe as series of doors on pivoting circles. Like you could imagine like a merry-go-round of like doors, all of them opening and showing different realities. And it felt like really like a place, like say the astral realm, where you're just like out of one reality and able to like see all of the different choice realities everywhere. And it went on infinitely. It was very large, and all the doors were golden. It was very cool looking. And then after seeing that, the guides were like, okay, there you go. And in that moment, there was a sense of jubilation, like, okay, wow, amazing. But then also a weird sense of disappointment, because what had been snuck in, the message that had been snuck in through the back door, is there's nothing to search for. There's nothing to search for. There's nothing missing. And I came upon this idea not as a belief, not as an idea that was given to me by somebody really, but just it became apparent, is what I mean to say. It became apparent that there's nothing to search for, that there's nothing missing, that there's nothing crucial to learn. That there's nothing to seek Like there's nothing to orient myself toward, like, okay, I need to get this, I need to get this, I need to get this. And I cried, and I laughed, and I celebrated as the seeking naturally came to a completion in me. I'm just remembering now, I was making my way over to like my scooter to get back home, or to our hotel, and it's like 4 a.m. or something. And I was just weeping, and everything was just hitting me, and I was so overcome by this sense of graduation, like just graduation, like don't need it anymore. And I integrated that over the next day or so. And what was funny is that even after that, I tried to get back into searching. Like I tried to get back into seeking. I tried to find like more things to read and look for and new levels to attain. And eventually, the completion was so complete in me that it just felt like empty effort. Like I just couldn't sustain the effort of seeking anymore. I just couldn't do it. And it just dropped away, and there was nothing to seek anymore. And it remained to this day. So the case with all three of these, and here's an indication that the awakening is registered, is that there's no going back. There's just no going back. Like these revelations have stayed with me ever since, up until today. Like today, I still am aware of God in everybody I talk to. I still am not seeking anything of fundamental value, and I still perceive the now moment outside of psychological time, which is really cool. There are higher levels of awakening that I actually am endeavoring to attain. And I don't do it with that seeking, needy seeking energy that I was describing before. There's no neediness around it, and there's no intensity around it, but there just is a desire to move into greater levels of awakening and see. And I know this because I will listen to others, say sages or mystics, talk about their experience of waking up. And I do notice that like some of them, they'll describe their waking up. It's like, okay, yep, I know that. And there are others that I just have not experienced. And I have them as information, like I believe that they're real and true and possible, and I could even maybe describe them to you, but I can't describe them from firsthand experience, only second and third hand experience. And so it's my desire to move into those levels of awakening, and it's become a very high priority of mine, although I still have, of course, my human priorities as a human person to, take care of my family, etc., etc., etc. Does having awakening off of psychedelics, does it cheapen the effect of the awakening? I don't think it does. I've considered it somewhat. I don't think it does. And the reason being, again, is because the awakenings endure even after the psychedelics wear off. So those are my 3 stories. Leave a comment. Let us know about yours. I would be fascinated to hear. You can offer as much or as little detail as you want. Please hit like on the video for me, please. And consider joining us at the Sovereign Creators Collective. There's a link for that below, where we were talking about this on the last call, and I have no doubt that we'll be talking about it more as we continue onward into greater and better discussions. We would love to have you if you're interested. So the info for that is below. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you later.